Welcome, everybody. I'm Stephanie Wasylyk, coach, thought partner, founder of the Happy Squirrel Collective, ADHD-friendly community for business owners who want to get shit done their own way.
Mhm.
And today, Susan and I decided to have this conversation. Susan's another person who loves to do things her own way. She is a stupendous coach who helps women redefine success, have success on their own terms. And she's been doing that for herself this past year too. And so we wanted to have a conversation together. Susan Doerksen Castro. Susan and I have been on a bit of a parallel journey this past year. Susan had an ADHD diagnosis about a year ago. And about a year ago, I decided to start my community as well. So we've been working closely together in tandem, sharing our journeys. And we wanted to give you a little bit of a behind the scenes today on what's going on. So, Susan, how are you arriving today?
Probably my classic, I don't want to say classic ADHD self. I don't think it's all of me. I know it's not all, but that swirl of energy. I don't feel ready for the conversation today. I don't feel like prepared enough. Thousand things came up this morning and I was all over the place. And so I'm arriving in a very familiar kind of state, but also a little uncomfortable. So here I am. Here I am.
To the
Another
day.
day in
Yeah.
the life of Susan.
We're
Mhm.
going to take the time today and be grounded together in this conversation and just enjoy it as we always do when we talk. I
Exactly.
think it's important to start this conversation today with there's going to be a theme of ADHD today, but neither one of us believes that defines a whole person. We all have other circumstances in our life, psychologically or just physically in our world, family or different circumstances that all contribute to how we show up every single day.
Mhm.
So while the theme today is a little bit ADHD slanted, it's so nuanced and there's always so much at play.
I remember when I got my diagnosis about a year ago, and everything was coming into view, and lots of things were making sense because all of a sudden, all these experiences I was having in my life, which just felt really normal to me because ADHD, to receive a diagnosis means that you've had it since little. All these things started coming into view and everything was making sense. And oh, that's why this whole piece around time blindness, which is today. Oh, that's why my brain always feels like it's got 1,000 ideas all at once. All these things came into view. And I remember because I'm a coach and I'm super passionate about supporting people, women, through different changes and transitions and helping them accomplish things that matter. I was like, oh, I should be like an ADHD coach. Yeah, that's it. And then I'm like, oh, Susan, slow down. Because sure, I could go that route, but I knew that I needed like the year to be in it before deciding that my whole business or my whole coaching approach would be related to ADHD. So that was a good call for me. So, on this topic of labels, I think what ADHD has really taught me is that it's just, in some ways, another transition in life. Just like I'm currently in perimenopause, which has got enough insanity on its own. It's a transition I'm going through, but it's not who I am. Same thing. These are stages of life that call on me, call on us to learn new things, leave other things behind. So, yeah, it's another reminder of it's like a set of glasses. Okay, I've got ADHD.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
And tell me if this resonates with you, but I like to think of myself as like an ADHD informed coach or
yeah,
ADHD friendly coach
yeah.
because I'm not an ADHD coach. Like, I'm not
Mhm.
going to sit here and only talk with you about your ADHD, right? Like, it's part of how a person achieves things, how they
Mhm.
approach the world, how they see their day
Mhm.
can be influenced by that, but it's not
Absolutely.
the only
Yeah.
thing that matters.
Yeah. So exactly. And I remember even before I had my ADHD diagnosis, you were always someone I could count on to give me structure to move things forward. You were always someone, because we knew each other in some mastermind circles, and being both Canadian, we overlap there. You were always someone who could bring me back to that thing that was most important to get me grounded there. You always, I think because it's been your approach in coaching, honored how I am and my own differences. So when you said, you know what, I'm going to embark on this journey of creating an ADHD-friendly community, I was like, thank you. Thank you so much. So to me, it's about really honoring how the people you work with, their approach on the world.
Exactly.
So, and ADHD is a significant way of that influences how I show up in the world. But I'm more, I'm better off to hang out in those places where it's honored, never an excuse,
Mhm.
because I've got a lot of shit done in my life having ADHD. I can't look back on my life and say I haven't been able to do things.
No. So over the past year, like how have things shifted for you in your business specifically? What have you maybe been trying differently or noticing differently than you would have before you
Mm.
suspected you had ADHD?
Yeah, some things that kind of came into view are, I think with ADHD and the internal speed of my brain, they say like Ferrari brain, I think it came into view. Oh, no wonder I have so many ideas all the time. And I have no question that they're brilliant. My ability to take action on those has always been tricky. So what I started to discover about having ADHD is that, how do I know which of those to actually go with? Knowing that I have an interest-driven brain, and what of that ideation is really good for me to move forward with. And so it's taught me to get really curious about like how to really discern what I need and want to do. So that's in some ways been helpful. I could see why burnout was and has been a theme in my life. And so I started doing little things like I use my tomato timer, working in 25-minute blocks, because that little pause there can help me just run around the house and scurry and get out some of my energy and then land again, work for another 25 minutes. And so it benefits me whether I'm in flow. And it also benefits me if I'm having a hard time getting into a task, because I just need to sit in it for 25 minutes and then I'm good. Or if I'm really stuck in it, it keeps me from hyper focusing and losing myself. Those are like some really day-to-day things.
The idea of, because something that I really admire about you is before your diagnosis, we've known each other, what, like 3 years now almost. You've always
Or,
been very grounded in your values and you
yeah.
really help other people sink into those feelings and what
Mhm.
really matters. And uh, I feel it's like a sense of calming and
Mhm.
grounding. What I notice you've done now that you have this understanding of, oh, I have all these ideas, which ones do I do? Is you've taken that concept of values and layered them on top of your ideas to
Mhm.
decide which ones to pursue or not. Can you talk a little bit about that and your values approach there?
That's what's so great about having had the chance to work with you on this side and that side. In terms of the body of work that I've been developing, in essence, I've had, and the people that I work with have had a particular idea of what success means to them. And all those definitions are great. But invariably, people, women, come to this point of questioning how they're doing things and why they're doing things, and if they want to keep doing things the same way for a whole host of reasons. So I have been finding myself in the coaching work that I do. The work is starting to do you, like you're in your own topics and things enough, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I'm actually being impacted differently because I talk about all this stuff. My husband and I have always had our values up in the kitchen or in the dining room, and we found those early in our marriage, and they've been really anchoring for us as a way to anchor myself I've really started to dig into, okay, like these values are on the wall. What do they mean to me and why? And what do they look like when I'm living them out? And oh, that's why I'm feeling so off kilter, because I'm not quite as aligned with some of those values. And it's been my experience that values are very enduring. Even though the words might not feel like the right words, the ideas, the health, for example, health has always been one of my key top values. And I've always, in some way, shape, or form, been looking to live and to express it. And that value has shifted now to what I call whole self health. It's not just enough for me to exercise or eat well or sleep. I need to pay attention to my heart. Oh, I've been really uncomfortable this week, feeling all these feels. What's going on? Listen to it. Mental health has been something I've struggled with. And then spiritual health. And do I feel connected to something bigger than me, even nature? The values have been really grounding for me and a reference point. And it's why I wear my little starfish, because it's my 5 values that I have. This is where I'm really going to lean into life and really express from that place and keep coming back to, okay, what do they mean to me? Am I living them out? Do I feel aligned? Oh, why not? How can I adjust? And so that has been really anchoring for me, calming, grounding. And the more I connect to those values, the more I experience that calm, and the more willing I am to take risks on behalf of living up my values. But it also means I'm not here to live out everyone's values. I'm not here to pick up everyone's cause. I'm here to really reach into those places that are mine to own. And those little marks in between remind me that's where I reach out and not everywhere.
Yeah.
And if a starfish gets bitten, did you know that its little arm grows back? So I can take risks. So I think that's a super long answer to values, but yeah, that's really been super helpful, meaningful for me.
Would you be comfortable sharing an example of a risk you've taken in your business that honors a value?
One of the risks, and maybe risk isn't exactly the right word, because as it relates to my values and living aligned, it's a different kind of risk. I'm not putting myself into danger, but it just means that I'm willing to get super, super uncomfortable. So, as it relates to the risks, I think the place where I've been getting really uncomfortable with the fact that financial wellness, financial wholeness is one of my values. And that means that I'm paying attention to paying off my debts, honoring all my commitments, and saving not just for the present or just for things that I want now, but also for the future and thinking of my kids. So it means being willing to reach into all of that. And so, like, just a while ago, I was like feeling really like off and noticing something's not right. And so I started to dig into my value of financial wholeness and realizing, yeah, there's some financial commitments I haven't made good on. I had been neglecting them for a long time, like a long time. I have an amazing capacity to avoid things. And then I have an amazing capacity to feel a tremendous amount of shame about things. And this had been going on for a long time on behalf of experiencing that integrity and alignment that I really long for and all the values I live out. I was like, I need to do some tough stuff and face up to them. So I reached out to someone who knew a whole lot more about this particular commitment that I had, knowing that for her it was like, easy peasy, and I could trust her. I felt super safe. And it's like a confessional. I'm like, okay, I've been out of integrity here. I'm like totally malaligned with this value. I am super uncomfortable right now. I can barely think of how to tackle it. She offered me the safety that I knew she would, help me take some steps, and got me into motion. And I have just, so that would be an example of kind of a place where I think I've said, doesn't really matter, Susan, if you're uncomfortable here, because this is a value. It's on your wall, but it can't just live there. It has to live here. It has to manifest itself in different ways. And now I'm feeling like, oh my gosh, because I'm still working through it, but being in it, that sense of finding alignment is super liberating. Still uncomfortable, but super liberating. And I feel proud of myself for my bravery. And now the more distance I can get, I can say, okay, Susan, why did you ignore it for so long? Like, why did you avoid it? I can start to bring that curiosity because I'm not on this planet anymore to judge the hell out of myself. I've already done that for the better half of my life. I'm more like, okay, that pattern, Susan, was not cool. Don't do that. Now that you see it, what are you going to do different? So I'm not quite into that yet, but I'm trying to transform that experience and allow that to deepen my sense of alignment.
And it sounds like you were, for a long time, the discomfort wasn't that big of a deal. And maybe you'd get these pangs of shame or guilt or something, but then they'd go
No,
away.
waves,
Yeah,
like
the waves,
waves.
exactly.
I swim in the sea of shame.
But
Yes.
then it's like facing it became equal in pain to what you were living with, and
Mhm.
it tipped. And I love that example because I think it's so important that we can talk about values, but then knowing how they show up and how they feel, which you described so beautifully, and then
Mhm.
facing them and the importance of facing it.
Mhm.
That's one example, but it's like that sense that you're just like, oh, I'm not feeling good about this. I'm
Yeah,
feeling stuck. I'm feeling blocked. Of course, they have business implications, the financial side of things, but then
absolutely.
of course, it's spilling over into the rest of your life as well as values as solopreneurs or individual business owners, or even like people in corporate as an individual. They blend, right? I
Yeah.
think it's one thing if you're running a company with 100 people and then the company has values and
Yeah.
you personally have values and they probably overlap, but most of us just live with our core values in every aspect of our life.
Yeah, I'm super curious about life in my previous work life. I had ways of architecting values into the whole system. It's one of the things I'm really proud of that I did. Like, values were embedded in everything.
Yeah.
And that was important to me because I wanted it to be enduring. If it's just about the people and actually not in the system itself, the people leave and then it's gone. I've been working on and developing an internal and inner architecture of success. So one that I can essentially build blueprint that I've already blueprinted it for myself and say, okay, how do I construct this so that it's in my life and it's how I do life. And I see the values on the wall, but I also know that my life is by design an expression of the values that I live and an expression of the strengths I possess, as well as strengths that I don't possess, because I'm not good at everything. Live it out and pay attention to those like places of, awkward.
This time is going by so fast. And
Yeah.
so I want to make sure that the last piece of what we talk about
Yeah.
today is what you're talking about now, of that like defining things for yourself. And I think this
Mhm.
applies to business. I think it applies to ADHD. I think it applies to our whole life. Number one, we get to decide it. But number two, we get to experiment and figure it out for ourselves. There's no one, like you said, you designed the blueprint for yourself.
Yeah.
You can't go to somebody and be like, teach me how I should live my life. Teach me how to run my business. Teach me how to manage my ADHD. I think this is one of the things I'm leaning into when I'm supporting people with ADHD. Since I don't have ADHD, I
Mhm.
don't have this method in my head that worked for me that I try
Mhm.
and make everybody else follow.
Right.
How I feel about business too, right? It's
Mhm.
our jobs as humans to learn about ourselves and learn about how we work and our values
Mhm.
and what makes
Mhm.
us tick and what
Yeah.
motivates us and what makes
Yeah.
us successful. And so, how have you been? Like, has any of that shifted in the last year for you? It's maybe a big question.
Everything. I think it's affirmed to me that exactly what you said. I think every day people, business owners, go to find that teacher, that guru, that system, that book that will tell them how to do it and be successful, that recipe. And that's part of how we learn. We try things out that other people give us. But to fully accept it as our own is, I think, where the mistake breaks down. Where it breaks down is you have to figure out what to keep of that and what to let go. Take what works, leave what doesn't. How do you know what works, Susan? Because it feels so damn good, right? Like it just clicks. There's ease, there's flow. Even as a coach myself, I hold everything that I do very lightly because humans are complex and they're dynamic and they're like little mini systems. And what lights one person up is going to be the noose around someone else's neck. So I use all of this to learn and to be reminded that whomever I'm sitting with. So even if you did have ADHD, how it would manifest and express in me would be different than it is for me. That's not, oh, you
Absolutely.
are the same. No way. That's saying I have two boys. They were made from the same humans. They're going to be the same. Yeah, we all know how that works. Doesn't work.
And
So
yet people do try and say, you have ADHD, this is how you should do it. You are an architect, this is how you should run your business. Like that happens
every
all the time.
every single day.
But
So
I
yeah,
don't think it works. I think it just perpetuates the shame and the
yeah,
self-doubt.
absolutely.
What we need to do is build that self-trust, right? We need to
Right.
honor commitments to ourselves. We need to
Yeah.
take actions. We need to start
Yeah.
to build that little bit of trust in ourselves. And the way I
Yeah.
recommend people do that is with experimenting,
I
right?
love
Like you
that.
said, try
Yeah.
something on. Oh, I like the sound of that. Okay, I'm going to try it, but it's an experiment. It's not that you're right or wrong if it does or doesn't work.
Yeah.
Experiments don't have to work to learn
No,
something.
no, it's that real idea of being a scientist and take the clues and leave the rest. And that's where there's so much alchemy and synergy is because I don't actually believe there's one way. And if people can take anything from this conversation, it's take from this conversation what resonates and leave the rest. Like something was touched, but also it's information. If you think that part, what that's crazy stuff, leave it. Take what works, leave the rest, but do that in all of your life.
Couldn't agree more. And
So,
this is why you and I have so much fun together because
mhm,
both of us, like I talk about permission to do business on your own terms. You talk
yeah,
about success on your own terms or
yeah,
define it your own
yeah,
way, right? That core essence, and maybe this
yeah,
is a value I haven't
yeah.
articulated in my list, but it's that core essence. So if anyone listening to this needs a thought partner to
Hmm.
experiment with or to
Yeah,
figure out their own way of doing things
yeah.
with someone who's not going to tell you what to do, I think you've got two people here who would be
Hmm.
thrilled to support you on that journey.
Yeah, for sure. Happy to co-create and design experiments with people so they can figure things out and then be that perspective that says, hey, that worked, but I didn't. Why are you holding on to that thing? It didn't feel good. So absolutely.
And you've
Um,
been doing these really cool blueprints with people. So you did the blueprint for yourself, but you can do
mhm.
that with
Anyone.
people as
Yeah,
well. And
absolutely.
where do they find you, Susan?
Where do they find me? Womenredefiningsuccess.com
And
is
Susan
the
has been doing
website.
some stellar YouTube videos, so you can check her
On
out on YouTube
YouTube
as
too.
well. If you're looking more for community-based support, especially if you have ADHD or suspect you have ADHD, come check out the Happy Squirrel Collective,
Mhm.
stephaniewasylyk.com/happy squirrel. And there'll always be some sort of discount code or promo or whatever. Anything that's going on will be on that page.
Yeah, you'll find me there. Happy little squirrel with my oak tree, Stephanie. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in and for this conversation, Steph, and for the work that you're up to.
And you too, Susan. Thanks for this.